Welcome at Riks Europe. In a movement that has sent ripples through Germany and beyond, the outgoing Bundestag has approved a monumental 1 trillion spending plan, marking a significant shift in the nation's fiscal and defense policy, even changing the constitution. This decision, orchestrated by Chancellor-in-Waiting Friedrich Merz, not only loosens Germany's strengthened debt regulations, but also channels unprecedented funds into defense and infrastructure projects. With us today is Markus Buchheit, live from the European Parliament. He's a member of the European Parliament for the AfD. Markus, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Hello, Scarlett. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
So, okay, this is really a significant change, of course, because Germany usually used to be very strict with the amount of spendings that they were doing. They actually changed the constitution. We're going to talk about the process after this, but let's talk about the consequences. What will this mean for Germany?
Well, right now you see that we pump another 500 billion euros into our infrastructure. If you think about what happened to Berlin Airport, you know that Germany is not very well in managing public infrastructure. And we pump another unlimited amount of money into our defense, right now around 400 billion euros. So in the end, we talk about 1,000 billion euros right now. And as you said it correctly, formerly we were quite aware in Germany that we need austerity. That is something that made us differ from countries like Spain, France, Italy, from the European South, if you want. That was rather a Northern European tradition to be quite austere when it comes to finances. And that was something I think we did quite well in the past. Imagine we had a debt ratio in comparison to our GDP of around 62, 63% in the last years. That, by the way, that was quite high. If you consider that to numbers we had in the 1990s, that's already quite high. And we know, some of us at least learned at university, that a very well-functioning state can manage up to 80% of debts in comparison to GDP. That is still working, but we are running above these 80% right now. And so what we do right now is pump up our economy, our devastated economy, by the way, with public money. And I mean, you might just as well burn the money right now. It will lead to growing inflation and stuff like that, because you can imagine that that the companies who are building infrastructure, they will raise their prices. I mean, there will be more demand for steel, for all the products you need to build certain things, bridges, streets, and stuff like that. So we will see much more inflation during the next years. But in the short run, it will be quite successful. It will seem as if our economy is doing well again. And I think that is the basic plan behind it, by the way.
Yeah, because let's talk about, because, when you read about it, they really know how to sell it very positively. They say, oh, yeah, because 500 billion, it would be also to modernize hospitals, schools, roads, energy networks. You cannot be against it, right? But is that really what is going to happen? No, it's just going to cause more inflation and it's going to settle up future generations with endless debts, basically, right?
Surely they're going to build things. Surely they're going to modernize hospitals and going to modernize schools and going to build new bridges. And still remember what happened in Dresden, by the way, with the Karoleva bridge. But that will come at a much higher cost than it is right now, because the companies, we have a limited amount of companies who are building this public infrastructure. We have a limited amount of plans to produce concrete, for example. So if we have suddenly much more demand, this will lead to rising prices. And I mean, if I was a public constructor, I would already raise my prices just now, because we will get less products in the future for the same amount of price as we pay right now. And apart from that, the German state is very, very bad in managing public money when it comes to public infrastructure. I just named the example of Berlin Airport, but we have many more examples where projects, and I think you have it in other parts of Europe, around the whole world, I guess, when it comes to public money, you have a project that is meant to last 5 years, then suddenly it lasts 10 years and doesn't cost you double what you envisaged in the beginning, but suddenly triple the amount you had planned for. And this will happen here in hundreds of projects. So I think it's really wasted money. Not in the sense that they said there is no need for modernizing our infrastructure, but the way they do it right now in an orgy of debts, that is really wrong to put directly 500 billions into there. It would have been nicer to cut money in other parts of our public spending. You can imagine what I think of. and put this money into these projects than suddenly going around with a shotgun of money.
Yeah, and let's also talk about the process and how this constitutional change was actually conducted. I mean, to change the constitution, that's such a drastic measure to take because it will have such long-term effects. I think now the guinea is out of the bottle because there's not going to be any restriction on how much money the government can actually spend. And this would not have happened if the same voting would have taken next week when the new Bundestag, the new parliament, which is elected by the people, which actually does have a mandate, would take place in Bundestag. They would be in power because, the Grüne, the AfD, you would have one third, oh, sorry, the Linke, not the Grüne, you would have over one third of the seats and you would be able to block this plan that's going to cause generations of debts. Can you give your take on that?
I mean, it says a lot about the state of democracy we're in right now. And you can always see these people who claim to be defending democracy. Think about what the CDU said all the time, the Greens said all the time, the Socialists said all the time. When they fight the AfD, they are permanently defending democracy. I mean, they would have better defended democracy by sticking to old principles, which is that the people in Germany, the democratic voters, elected another government as as their direct representatives, in the parliament, and they didn't want to have the old parliament anymore. Now, with a bounding force towards the future, you make the old parliament decide upon these things. And that is crazy. That has nothing to do with democracy. That has nothing to do with accepting the will of the people. That is staying in power at any cost and making your own guys probably rich again. That is all they want. And to push through their politics. They don't give, no, I don't want to say the word. They don't give a lot about the people's will. And that is not necessarily democratic, if you agree with me.
No, and the whole process seems so sneaky. The timing, of course, could not have been more off. But also, Merz, he was elected, but the way he presented himself during the elections was someone that would be financially very conservative, not spending too much governmental money. And he made a 180-degree turn. Basically, he lied to his voters.
It's not basically. It is, he lied to his voters. Absolutely. Yeah, he did. He was in there. He was in his campaign and he said, we will not make more debts and stuff. We understand the importance of austerity. And by the way, it was the EPP, it was the CDU who put those limits into our constitution as well in the past. And now it's exactly that party that says, no, come on, we leave it all. Because what happened? They realized what they did with the Green Deal to our economy. They destroyed our economy. And now they put public money into there to rescue it, save it, cover it a little bit. What happened during the last years? I think that's what's going on right now. But in the end, it is actually the last chapter of the deindustrialization of Germany that we see right now.
So what you said in the last part is the destruction of the industry. Can you please elaborate on that? What do you mean with that?
Well, not far from here, in the Parlement building, there where the European Commission is, Ursula von der Leyen once declared it was in autumn 2019, the European Man on the Moon project. And that was the European Green Deal. 2019, there was Greta Thunberg around. Everybody suddenly needed to rescue the global climate. Nobody is talking too much about that anymore. But okay, in 2019, they wanted that. They wanted selfies with Greta Thunberg, and they declared this project. So what did they do? They suddenly declared that by 2035, we wouldn't sell any more internal combustion cars, or the traditional cars with diesel and fuel-driven engines. But we would rather go towards electric cars. So they interfered there. They told the producers what to produce. They told the citizens what to buy. And they did this by subventions and stuff, and also by putting penalties onto the car producers in case they wouldn't stick to the numbers of cars they needed to produce in the electrical sectors. So that was one part. So you put the state directly in there, like in a late Soviet era planned economy. And now you have basically the same effect. You go again in there with 1,000 billion euros just in Germany, where you also have the Rearm Europe plan, surely from the European Commission. And you put your hands again into the free economy and put again public money in there and tell producers again what to produce. And you blow up the whole public sector once again. And basically, if you ask me, we had a German politician who said above 40% of now how do you say that of a public of the public quota of the state quota. If the state quota raises above 40%, you're living in communism, and we are far above the 50% now already. So basically we are already living in communism right now, and I think now you destroy the free will of the people, the free will of the producers, one more step. And that is what I meant before. We are running into with full speed into a planned economy here.
Yeah, because like you said, the Green Deal is something that is not off the table yet. They even announced now that they're going to spend, I think, 100 billion as well for green policies in Germany. Um, I'm trying to make sense of all the timing that is happening. And the one hand, we have President Donald Trump, who's really pushing for peace negotiations. And then we have here Europe that is increasing a lot of budget for defense. We had the rearm plan, rearm Euro plan. It's going to cost 800 billion. I think this plan now from Germany is on top of the rearm Euro plan. And then also Ursula von der Leyen wants to have access to our private savings because it needs to be invested where necessary. And it's probably going to be either climate or defense again. I'm just trying to make sense of it. Markus, please help me. What do you think is the real agenda behind this?
Well, I'm still trying to make sense of it as well. And we could go to the European Commission to ask them what they think of it. I think that defense is a sector where you can quickly put money into. It's one of these sectors where you can easily put money. There is a huge interlinkage between public interests, which is defense, defense towards the exterior, and private companies. So this is really a system where you can easily pour money inside as well as the infrastructure. And so I think what they really want to do is to cover this devastated GDP in Germany, the deindustrialization, as we said it before, and the decline of our economy by now lighting a little fire in there. And it will be a very short-term fire because I guess within 4 or 5 years, you will not see these consequences anymore. And you will see the true face of, the consequences of their actions during the last, you might already say 10 to 15 years.
Last question. Do you think that by increasing Germany's defense, this can lead to a new arm race?
I don't really believe that this country is even capable of leading a war in our time, in these days. They might have the equipment, but they don't have the people to man the equipment, if you want. So I think it's not really. I don't think that they really believe in a real threat by Russia. They they also didn't think about a threat by global climate. That's also not true. These are fake words. They are putting up fake images, if you want, in order to legitimize their politics. That's all they want. They don't want anything else. There was no threat, for example, by any tsunamis in Germany to our nuclear industry or to our nuclear power plants. That was never the case. Nonetheless, after Fukushima in 2011, they switched off all our power plants. They are putting up images into the minds of people. They try to manipulate people. They put up false threats in order to legitimize their politics. That's all they do. And this is right now how they legitimize their public spending and their outrageous public debt policy.
Markus, thank you so much for being us with here today and sharing all of your insights. Please keep us up to date, and of course, thank you to our viewers for watching.
Thank you, Scarlett. Have a nice day.